We want to welcome on South Carolina Congressman Ralph Norman to talk about the issues that could affect the American electorate going into November. So, Congressman, I appreciate you joining us tonight. We see right now that maybe some legislation when it comes to police reforms is stalled for the time being, but when it comes to what comes next going into November, what is on the legislative agenda?
Well, the law enforcement is top of the agenda. Instead of defunding law enforcement, we ought to be putting more funds to it. Tearing up towns, burning, looting is not the American way of life. That's not how you get change. But that's at the top of the agenda. The things I'm working on, if you look at what affects the economy, flying, being in the air, and I've got a bill up that for TSA to test a temperature on a trial basis to give people security, let them know that planes are safe. And if somebody's sick, you don't want to be sitting right next, beside them. So that's of utmost importance. It affects 10.4 million people pre-COVID. We've got to get back to the airlines and where people feel comfortable flying.
And that seems like a very common sense thing. I mean, even when I go into work, for example, I get my temperature checked. If you were to go, for example, to a restaurant, most of them are checking your temperatures as well. Why isn't that something that is already being done by our airports? For example, when you go to travel, something that is known to transmit the disease, especially acknowledging the fact that you have the air system in the plane that also promotes the transmission of this disease.
Yeah, you're recirculating air. And I was talking to a pilot who knew all the ins and outs of the circulation system. And he said if there's a time to wear a mask, it is on a plane. But we've got to take it a step further. If you're sick, if you have a temperature, you shouldn't be able to fly. Now, if you've got a medical condition that explains, why you would have a fever, that's something the TSA could consider. But they're the logical ones to do it because they've been doing this a long time. Checking people, making sure they're, the people that are flying should be. This is just another step with a pandemic that's hit this whole country to get people to feel secure, to fly again. And it affects so many areas of the economy, from trade, look at the tourism that it affects. So we got to get people feeling comfortable. This is one way of doing it. And then after a trial period, if it's either not effective or they feel like that it's too much trouble, then we can adjust it.
And I guess one bright spot of this whole subject is the fact that we are talking about travel once again being existent. I mean, it wasn't too long ago where air travel was basically shut down or very limited across the country. People weren't even able to think about the prospect of a vacation or even going to visit family members in some parts of this country. So we have moved on a little bit. Things are starting to open up in different parts of the country. Of course, some states are imposing new restrictions as well. But when it comes to an idea of a coronavirus relief bill, is that something that you think is still possibly on the table a little bit further down the road, or are we still in that wait and see type of period as acknowledging where the economy goes from this point forward as lockdowns go down?
Here's what a lot of people are talking about, Alex. You look at a stimulus package. The money, it's $3 trillion has already been allocated. A lot of that has not been spent. What conservatives really want to see is something other than cash payments, because we've got to get people incentivized to go back to work, to go back to that restaurant, to go back to that airline. And it's not by giving them more money to stay out of work. So the payroll tax credit, I think, is an option that ought to be on the table, seriously considered. I think that'll help the business person. But, just allocate more money. We're already $3 trillion in. It's not like we had a piggy bank to get the money. We're borrowing the money. And at some point, we've got to decide how we're going to pay for it. And it's not, you don't just continue to run your credit card bill up. Politicians are pretty good at that. We got to stop that, figure out how to pay for it, and do non-cash incentives for business because they're the lifeblood of the economy.
And that's something that we've seen too, kind of a divide a little bit, if you will, as to what the next direction should be. In fact, we've seen the success of the PPP program, what it did of keeping workers on those payrolls as opposed to letting them go on unemployment or anything like that. But unemployment is expected to at least run out, the type of benefits that a lot of people are receiving right now. And there's also talks about another stimulus check as well. So once again, what you're talking about right now, should we see the different programs right now expire, let them play out and kind of take a more wait and see approach before we even think about another second stimulus check or another round of relief bills, anything like that? Should we wait and see right now?
Absolutely. I mean, the way this has been described has been, and a couple of people have said it's like building an airplane and taking off at the same time. We didn't know how it was going to be affected. The virus hit us unexpectedly. So we do have to have a wait and see, and we got to make sure that Americans are incentivized to go back to work, not stay at home. It ends, as you know, at the end of this month, and I'm going to be opposed to any more spending at this point. Again, because we don't have the money, the pot of money that we're getting it from. We're borrowing it. But I think that's where you have to have debate. That's where I hope we can all come back to Congress and debate these issues. Right now, Ms. Pelosi is not calling for any type of debate, and we really need to have that and hear both sides.
And to your point, too, I mean, I've heard from individual workers themselves saying that the unemployment system incentivizes them not to go back to work. They're making more right now than when they were on paychecks. And it's the same thing for more contracted workers, whether it's for Uber or Lyft type things as well. They're telling me the same very thing, that they are making more money right now on unemployment than if they were to go back to work and start working again. So I think you're right to say that to some degree that does need to be revisited, or maybe allow it to expire before we start worrying about paying out more types of things to these type of programs. Take that wait and see approach, acknowledging the fact that many states are reopening right now. So I think it's a good point. But Congressman Ralph Norman, I appreciate you coming on tonight, always breaking down the issues and the legislative agenda for us. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.